Hello everybody, welcome back, or welcome if you are new here. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different, or that I haven't done in a while, which is to answer some of the most frequently asked questions I get about jaw surgery. So as many of you know, I had double jaw surgery about 2.5 years ago now. I have documented the entire process from the year before as I was preparing for it, through the whole surgery and recovery, and kind of updates along the way throughout this whole past 2 years, really recovering fully from surgery. More recently, I've been getting a lot of questions from you guys, either here on YouTube, on Instagram DMs, or via email about jaw surgery and kind of the process of deciding whether or not to have jaw surgery. Maybe you're considering it, maybe you're actually prepping for it and you have questions about the preparation process or the recovery process. But I've been seeing a lot of the same questions over and over again. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to answer some of those questions more in depth in case there are others of you out there that are wondering the same things. Before we get into the questions, obviously a big disclaimer here. I am not a jaw surgeon, I'm not an orthodontist or a medical professional. I've only been through the experience myself, and I can only kind of speak to what I have been through and my own viewpoint on things. So I'm never going to be able to tell you specifically whether or not you should have jaw surgery or you shouldn't, or tell you exactly what to do or answer really specific questions about your particular case. But I hope I can maybe give a little bit of an overview of what the process was like for me and answer some of those questions about how I went about preparing for my surgery and really kind of like figuring out whether or not I wanted to do it in the first place. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's get into the questions. So the first question, the one that I probably get the most, which is maybe not surprising, is am I happy with the outcome of my surgery? I've talked about this different times throughout other videos that I have done, but 100% yes, I am happy with the outcome. I am very glad that I did the surgery, and I would do it again if I had to. I mean, I would not want to do it again. I'm not gonna lie, the recovery process is not easy, but if for some reason I was like magically taken back to where I started before surgery and told that I had to go through the entire process and recovery again if I wanted to get back to where I am now, I would do it again. Even though I had some maybe like minor complications, like I had a tooth that was damaged during the surgery, which I believe only happens in like 1% of cases, but I had to kind of deal with that. And then I ended up having all of my metal plates removed later because I was experiencing some issues with those, which again, a very small percentage of people end up having the plates removed. So even despite all of those things that kind of came up along the way throughout the recovery, I would totally do it again. I'm happy with the outcome in terms of my bite feels much more comfortable. I have a lot less head and neck pain and tension. I got a huge improvement in my airway, which I think has improved my sleep. And I'm also happy with the aesthetic outcome, even though that was not why I did the surgery in the first place. Like I had pretty significant bite issues, and like I said, I had a lot of head and neck tension and pain that I believed was at least partly being caused by like just an uncomfortable bite. So all of those things really did improve, but there is always an aesthetic change when you're having a major jaw surgery like this. And to be honest, that just felt like a little bit of a bonus to me, that I feel like I do like the way my face looks better now than I did before. So long story short, yes, I'm happy with the outcome. I would do it again if I had to. Another question that I've been getting a lot is around my fatigue levels. So another thing that I talked about before surgery was that I have been experiencing chronic fatigue and some other like hormone issues and just sort of long-term health issues for many, many years. And my hope was that by correcting sort of the structural component of my bite, improving my airway, etc., that there might be a difference in my fatigue levels or kind of my overall health. Some of the health issues that I've been experiencing might be impacted by the jaw surgery. I was not expecting jaw surgery to be like this magical thing that just solved all my problems overnight, but I was curious to see if like maybe a little bit of the sleep component with a better airway or just more comfort in my bite, like kind of a more relaxed jaw, less like strain on my head and neck, might improve some of these symptoms over time. Unfortunately, I really haven't noticed any difference in my fatigue or other health problems since having the jaw surgery, except for, like I said, I have had quite a significant reduction in like head and neck tension and pain. And between that and the improved airway, I do feel like having a bigger airway at night like has made me just sleep a little bit longer and better quality sleep overall. I think all of those things together over time, that's only going to have a beneficial impact on the health of the rest of my body. Whether that's just by like reducing stress or again, improving sleep and recovery. Like even if I'm not noticing anything significant now or right away, in the long run, those things are going to be good for me. I'll never know, obviously, like what my health outcomes would have been if I hadn't had jaw surgery, thinking in the long term, like many, many years down the road. But in my mind, it's going to have a positive impact, and I'm going to be glad that I did that, because it could, I think if I had not had the surgery and my bite had continued to change, or I'd had that smaller airway like later in life, those things could have turned into bigger problems. So the surgery may not have had a direct impact on my fatigue levels or health issues in the immediate term, but I really believe that the long-term impact on my overall health and wellness is going to be a positive one. A related question that I also get is about sleep apnea, whether I had sleep apnea and whether that was like something that was resolved because of the surgery. I was never actually diagnosed with sleep apnea. So I did do a sleep study at one point, and I also had some other like sort of less intense, I guess, sleep studies, like little things that you wear at night just at home, where there's like maybe showed little minor interruptions in my sleep, but nothing that would actually correlate with a diagnosis of sleep apnea. However, when I did my consultation with my surgeon, because of the narrow airway that I had, he did say that I would be much more likely to develop sleep apnea later in life if I didn't have it already. And at least in the case of the particular clinic where I went, they have been doing a lot of surgeries specifically for people that have sleep apnea. Maybe they don't have an actual like aesthetic or bite problem that they're trying to correct, but they want a more permanent solution for sleep apnea. So they're having this jaw surgery to open up that airway so that they maybe don't have to use a CPAP machine. So if you do have sleep apnea and you think that the narrow airway might be part of the problem, like because of your jaw structure, I do think that this surgery can potentially be something to look into or consider for that. I have been seeing more and more around this idea of like having double jaw surgery specifically for sleep apnea purposes, and it sounds like some people are having really good outcomes with that. So again, that was not the case for me, but I do find that really interesting that if you do have sleep apnea, that this could really be something to look into. Whether you're considering a jaw surgery because of a bite problem, maybe a structural problem, perhaps more of like just an aesthetic issue, or something like sleep apnea, another question that I hear a lot is just basically like, how do I decide what to do? I've gotten a lot of emails or DMs from you guys kind of explaining where you're at, like maybe what your situation is with your own bite or orthodontic issues, and kind of asking like, how do I decide if this is something that I should do? Understandably, a lot of people feel sort of nervous about surgery or the thought of having to deal with the recovery process, and just don't really know how to proceed in making that big of a decision. Obviously, I can't tell you what to do. I can't determine if your case is like, yes, you should do surgery, or no, you shouldn't. That's always gonna be a really individual situation. But I will give you kind of my own thought process behind making a decision like this, and when I was first looking into jaw surgery, how I thought about it and decided to move forward. When I first had a consult with an orthodontist who basically told me that my only option to really correct the issues I was experiencing was surgery, that was not on my radar at all. It really hadn't crossed my mind that like major surgery was the next step, or maybe kind of the only step if I really wanted to fix the problems that I was having. But I also kind of knew right away like where I was and how I was feeling about the situation, that even if it meant having a surgery, that if I could, if I did the research into it and felt like that was the appropriate choice for me, that I had no real problem deciding to do that. I wasn't super scared about surgery or recovery. I knew I could handle that if I had to. I mean, obviously it's never like something you want to do, to have a big surgery like that. But I think for me, I just felt like I wanted to fully correct these issues badly enough that I was pretty willing to do whatever it would take. On the other hand, for many of you, I can definitely understand like If you're having maybe more of a minor issue, it's something that's not necessarily bothering you on a day-to-day basis, I can really see where sort of facing surgery less as a like choice that you are willingly making to like go into a surgery and more feeling like it's something that you kind of have to do, that would be a lot harder decision to make. One of the biggest things that helps me make a decision like this is to actually think about something that my grandpa once said, which was that whenever you're making a decision, you're choosing between two sets of problems, and you have to decide which set of problems you would rather deal with. So in the case maybe of jaw surgery, you have the problems of not doing surgery and continuing to deal with whatever issues you are experiencing now. And you kind of have the problems that come with doing surgery, that is any sort of inherent risks of having a major surgery, dealing with the recovery process, and all of that. At least in my case, if I thought about it that way, I knew that I did not want to continue dealing with the problems that I was experiencing, and that I was very willing to deal with the problems of having a surgery and dealing with the recovery. Because I was experiencing other issues and I felt like those issues were really potentially going to get worse over time, the problems of having surgery, or that I knew were going to be sort of potential risks of surgery and that whole process of recovering from surgery, I was much more willing to take that on than to sort of continue with the discomfort of where I was at. So if you're kind of on the fence about whether or not you think you should have this surgery, that could be one way to think about it. Would you rather deal with the problems you are experiencing right now, or sort of the problems that you would experience with just dealing with having a surgery and dealing with the recovery? Another thing that really helped me make the decision to have surgery was honestly just finding a surgeon that I felt really comfortable with and really trusted, and also an orthodontist that I really liked working with. So when I first decided to look further into this, I found an orthodontist in my area that I went to, that she'd come really highly recommended. I went and spoke with her and had a consultation with her, really connected immediately with her, and felt like she did a really good job of being really thorough and explaining all my options and giving me some more info on the surgery process. She also recommended a couple of surgeons that I could consult with in my area here, and then I had a previous recommendation for the surgeon that I saw in Spain, who I did a virtual consult with. So I highly recommend, if you can, doing consultations or speaking to several surgeons and maybe orthodontists, depending on like if you already have an orthodontist or not. But really like take the time to really kind of interview or talk to as many people as you can, either in your area or, you know, sometimes even doing a virtual consultation with somebody, even if you might not necessarily be able to go see them in the end. I think it can be really worth potentially doing a consultation just to hear what other people have to say about your case, to kind of see what their recommendations are, or just even get kind of a second opinion. Now, I realize that not everybody is going to have access to multiple surgeons. Maybe you're in an area where you can't even find somebody that does this kind of surgery. But I think if at all possible, if you can do some consults with different surgeons and kind of hear what different people have to say, what their treatment plans would be, what kind of outcome they would expect for you, whether or not they think surgery is appropriate, and even just finding somebody who you feel comfortable with, just like kind of on a vibe level, can make a really big difference if you are trying to decide whether or not you want to have surgery. So for example, the first surgeon that I went to see, or actually the two surgeons that I went to see locally here in my area, both of them, when I went to talk to them and like went to the clinic and, you know, kind of had the whole experience from like walking in the front door, being in the waiting room, like talking to their nurses or support staff, and then talking to the actual surgeon and going through that whole process and just kind of even like seeing what it felt like in the clinic, I got a really good idea right away of whether or not I felt comfortable in that space or comfortable with that person. There was one surgeon who I felt like was quite competent and probably would have done a really good job, but to be honest, I just didn't feel that like connection with her, and the whole sort of energy of the clinic and the space and the people, I just did not feel comfortable there. And so that just did not feel like the place for me. And if that had been my only option for having surgery, I probably would have been a lot more hesitant to move forward and maybe would have held off. When I did the virtual consult with my surgeon in Spain, I immediately felt like really at ease. I felt like he explained everything really well, and I just kind of had a sense of like this felt right. And I think that gut instinct thing can be really powerful when you are choosing to do something like this. So if you are feeling like kind of overwhelmed or like you aren't sure whether you want to move forward, maybe because you've only talked to one surgeon or maybe you haven't talked to anybody yet, I do think that like finding the right person, if you find that person that you feel like, okay, I really feel confident that they are going to be able to do this surgery well and get me the outcome that I want, that can make the decision-making process a lot easier. And it might take a little bit of searching or a little bit of time or having to, potentially go out of your immediate area if you can to find the person that you feel like is right for you. Kind of a related question that I also get is just basically people saying that they're scared of getting a bad outcome, or maybe they've seen like other videos or stories of people that have had kind of like horrible experiences with their jaw surgery. Understandably, that would be pretty nerve-wracking or really maybe like turn you away from wanting to pursue this. On the one hand, I think it's really important to be aware of the, potential negative consequences of this surgery or really any surgery. On the other hand, I think it can also be really easy to kind of get caught up in sort of the horror stories and really just seeing the negative side of things. And two things that helped me here. One was speaking to several people that had the surgery themselves. I think I spoke to at least 3, maybe 4 people that had done the surgery. Some of them had done it more recently, like a couple of years ago. Some of them had done it many, many years ago. So I got to get like kind of a wide variety of perspectives on what kind of surgery they had, where they had it. They all had it at like different places, and what their outcomes were, what their recovery was like. The more I talked to people who had actually been through it and kind of heard the same story over and over again about the whole process of getting ready for it and kind of what they experienced afterwards in terms of recovery. And they all had very similar stories. Experiences were not super easy and super great, and they were not like really terrible, horrible either. But they all had very similar experiences of the entire process, which honestly just kind of put me more at ease that like, okay, lots of people have done this surgery and lots of people are having very good outcomes, and kind of whether they had the surgery at this place or with this surgeon or that surgeon, they're having a similar experience and a similar outcome in the end. And after talking to people in person and then also watching a lot of other YouTube videos and testimonials of people that had had the surgery, the more that I heard people kind of repeat the same things over and over again, the more comfortable I felt like I could do this and have that same experience and I could handle it. Like if all these other people could do it, then I could do it. I also just asked a lot of questions of the surgeon, of my orthodontist. The clinic where I went in Spain, they had a lot of like support team that you could speak with or that I could, kind of get information from. And anytime I had questions, I would ask the surgeon, I would ask the clinical team, or I'd ask my orthodontist, and I just tried to make sure that if I was unsure of something or if I didn't understand something or I wanted more information, that I asked. That's what they're there for. They are the experts on these things and they should be able to answer those questions. So if you have questions about potential side effects or about your particular case or things that you are nervous about or how to handle the recovery, don't be afraid to ask all of those things ahead of time. Try to get as much information as you can or as much information as you want to make you feel more comfortable with the process. So if you're hesitating to look into surgery or to decide to have surgery because you are nervous about having a bad outcome, for one, I just think that's really understandable and normal. And also, if you find a surgeon you really trust and feel comfortable with, and you ask all the questions that you're having, that will go a long way in making the decision to move forward with this and to feel more comfortable and confident that you are going to get the outcome that you want. Speaking of outcomes, another question that I get a lot is about numbness and people maybe being either nervous that they're going to have numbness forever, or maybe they've had jaw surgery already and they're early in the recovery process and have areas that are numb and wondering if it's ever going to go away. Do I still have areas that are numb, etc.? So what I will say on that is that I do not have areas that I would say are totally numb anymore. I do have a few spots like kind of along the left side of my lower lip where it's like, again, it doesn't feel totally normal. Like if I touch it, it's a little bit of that like tingly sensation. It's not something I notice hardly ever, like unless I am specifically like touching my lip. But I also have noticed even 2.5 years out of my surgery that things are still changing or still improving. So I do feel like areas that maybe don't have like perfect or totally normal feeling, I am still getting more feeling back over time. So if you're early in the process and you have numb areas, that is still very normal, and I wouldn't really be too worried about it. But again, ask your surgeon, ask your team, like what should be expected in your particular case. Other people that I spoke to that have had the surgery as well, a couple people did mention similarly that they might have like one spot here or there that is still slightly numb and has been kind of forever, but that it's never something that has impacted their day-to-day life, or that they don't even notice it or think about it unless they are, talking about it or for some reason like specifically honed in on that one spot. But for me, or for anybody else that I have talked to, even if you experience a little bit of like long-term numbness or even like permanent areas that might be slightly less than ideal, it's not something that has been bothersome, or it's not like your entire face is gonna stay numb forever. And one other question that I get quite a bit related to recovery is just kind of like how long of a recovery process to expect, maybe particularly immediately post-op, like how much time should you be expecting before you kind of get back to normal life, before you can go back to work or kind of get back to normal activity or workouts and stuff like that. Again, I think it's going to be different for every case, and I can't tell you that like, oh, you for sure will be fine after 2 weeks or whatever. Everybody's going to recover slightly differently or handle surgery a little bit differently. Every surgery is going to be a little bit different, so I can't say with certainty what the process is going to be like for you. But I think in general, what I would say is expect a little more time than maybe you would think, at least for that immediate post-op period. Like I knew the first 2 weeks were gonna be really hard, and that was really the worst, was those first 2 weeks. But even like the 2 weeks, maybe the first 2 months after surgery, it was still a little bit difficult. Like I wouldn't have wanted to, like maybe be on a Zoom meeting trying to talk to people that, I didn't know, or that didn't know I had just had jaw surgery. I was still fairly swollen. It was a little bit hard to talk normally. It was a little bit hard to eat. So I do think that if at all possible, if you can give yourself a little more time to recover, especially just time to kind of rest, to let your body heal, to feel a little more comfortable with like the swelling, talking, eating, etc. If you can plan in advance for that and have more time than you think you need immediately post-op, you'll probably be glad you did that. At the same time, I have seen stories of other people who have the surgery and like within 2 weeks, they're really, talking and eating fine, and it's not that big of a deal. So I think it really will be case dependent. If you're having a fairly minor movement of your jaw, you might recover a lot more quickly. Maybe if you have a job where you don't have to be like speaking directly to people or on video or anything like that, you might be able to get back to work a little faster. But while those first 2 weeks might be kind of the worst of it in terms of really discomfort levels, there are going to be a couple more weeks after that where you're still kind of in the beginning stages of recovery. And I think if you can take it more easy for an extra couple of weeks after that, that's probably going to be beneficial. So those are a lot of the questions that I've been getting lately over and over again from those of you that are thinking about having jaw surgery. Maybe you're already partway into the process and just starting to have some questions about it. I hope that might be helpful for some of you out there who are maybe earlier in this process. If you have other questions, please do feel free to reach out either in the comments below. You can DM me on Instagram, or my email is in the description box below. I'm always happy to help if I can. Like I said, I'm not a surgeon, not a doctor. I can't tell you what to do, but I hopefully can maybe give some general advice or reassurance, or I don't know, just be helpful in some way. I am happy to try to support other people that are going through this process, because I know it can be really daunting. And I had a lot of support and a lot of help along the way that made it a lot easier for me. So I am happy to pay that forward if I can. So do feel free to leave your questions below or reach out to me. Or if maybe you know somebody else who is thinking about this surgery or getting ready for it, you could share this video with them. Thank you as always for watching if you have made it this far, and I will talk to you guys soon.